by Dushyantji, because we are now going to focus on a very, very important Purushartha and a very important aspect of that Purushartha, Artha. You know, Artha is one of the most important Purusharthas because in Purusha, Artha, there is Artha, right? We never called it Purusha Dharma, Purusha Moksha. We say Artha, the reason why humanity, what humanity pursues, right, is Artha. And in today's connotation, especially as the macro forces, the macro political, macro economic, macro social forces come together or converge and diverge in various factors. Those who we thought will be our friends did not remain our friends. Those who we thought may not be our friends may come to our help, or at the time of need we may be alone, and surprisingly we are good enough alone. That's what India proved during Operation Sindhu. We are also looking forward for the various addresses by people from the military on the topic. But now we'll be discussing with the erudite scholars beside me, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji, who has reinvented the pedagogy right from the Arsha Sampradaya. Pankaj Saxena ji, the author of Swayambodh and Shatrubodh, the title of our panel discussion today, to be self-aware. Only when we are aware of our own selves, we'll be aware of how to deal with the enemy. And who is that enemy? Right? Who is the enemy and who are we? And that is the question that needs a continuous review. And Dr. Sumedha ji, who is scholar par excellence about the Maurya period of the history in Niti Shastra, Artha Shastra traditions, and you just keep speaking to her about Artha Shastra and the time just passes. So without much ado, let us jump into the discussion. So I open up for the opening remarks. So we are told that India is a very nice and friendly country which has never conquered anybody. Ajatashatru, Dharmaraja, Rama, nice people. We will never bear Shatrutva to anybody, which is true in some connotation, but were we always this goody, nice, people? Did we never have a Shatrubodha? Were we never protected against the enemies? Did our ancestors not have that knowledge to protect ourselves? So,
who would you want to start?
I think, yeah,
I think so.
Is it on? Am I audible?
Yes.
Namaskar to everyone. It's a pleasure being here as part of this panel with this wonderful erudite audience.
You ask backside because sometimes they are not hearing.
Can you hear at the back? Can you hear at the back? Yes, you can.
maybe volume.
Okay. So it's very difficult to follow the class act of Dushyant Sridharji, but we shall try to maintain your interest. So I think Swayambodh and Shatrubodh can be considered from many points of view. I am going to look at it from the point of view of Niti Shastra, of Artha Shastra, and I would like to say we have that famous promise of Sri Krishna in the Gita, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya. So whenever dharma is going through any crisis or problem, we have to fight for it. Vinashaya Chadushkatam. We have to finish off the people who are adharmic. So I don't agree at all that we were the proponents of ahimsa or not fighting, no yuddha, etc. Look at all our devis and devtas. All of them have ayudh. All of them are fighters. And Sri Ram is not some goody smiling and quiet person. He is the Yodha par excellence. Look at the Vibhuti Yoga section of the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Ram is exemplified as the best Dhanurdhar. And all the excellent things in the world are being described in the Vibhuti Yoga chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So you see, Dhanurdhari was an excellent thing. Now, if I come to Niti Shastra, then the ideas of Shatru, that is, it's called Ari, are very, very clearly defined. There is a nation, that nation has to save itself, and what is the dhuri of that nation? The pivot, that is dharm. So whenever dharm is in danger, we have always fought. For that, we have had war, weapons, manuals for strategy. We have had from the Dhanurved to the Agni Puran to the Arthashastra. So we had the psychology of knowing our Shatrus, the reasons for when a fight was necessary, and the tools with which to fight. I'm sure we'll discuss all this later. Thank you.
So looking forward, now Pankaj Saxena.
Yeah, thank you, Sumedha ji, and namaskar to everyone. I think this, when we became aware of this battlefield when social media came on, even the Hindu side, the so-called Hindu side, was very fond of saying that, we have never invaded anyone in the last 1,000 years or so. I mean, if that is true, that's your fault. Do not let your fault be your virtue signaling. We should have, if that was not the case, but we did. Because until it was the British era which made us forget who we truly are. I am currently studying the Northeast, and until 19th century, Hindu saints, Hindu swamis are very, very powerfully going to some of those communities which we had never reached before, and taking Vedic Sanatan dharm to them, teaching them the best qualities of this marga. And apart from that, how did the Bali Hindus come to be? How did the Hindu temples get created in Vietnam, for example? One of the most ancient Hindu temples on the UNESCO World Heritage list are in Vietnam, also in Mysore. So how did we reach there? All of this never happened. We did invade. Of course, we had ethics. Of course, we had rules. Of course, we had a way in which we fought. We were better than others. But that did not mean that we did not have any sense of Shatru. Like when I wrote this book and they say your title itself is very wrong, And why I say so? These are very very well-known objections. So one of them wrote to me, it's not in our DNA. Even if your argument is right, because they cannot argue with the arguments that are given there, the reasons that are given there, and they say it's not in our DNA. So first of all, I say this manner of speaking, it's not in our DNA. This is a cultural thing. You don't need DNA to change for it. You can learn it in a lifetime. You can learn it in a matter of few years. You don't need DNA to change it. And if you are talking about that, then you have to excise Gita and all of it, like she said. Then you have to forget all our gods and all our deities, all our Puranas, all Itihasas, even Vedas, even in Upanishads, you will find some references where there is ayod, where there is a fight. So you have to forget your entire tradition, believe in a wishy-washy thing which was created in last 50, 60 years, when we turned our sense of defeat into something morally, intellectually defensible to our own. It was an ego defense mechanism. A defeated society, defeated civilization, for some times it shields itself from the fact that it is defeated by these things that, it's not good to fight. So now the time has come for us to recognize ideological shatrus. When I talk and I make it clear in my book, I'm not talking of people, of individuals. Sitaramji said that if you do not fight at the level of ideas, you have to fight in the streets. And so you have to take the fight ideologically. So those ideas, and just to sum up in the first volley of these questions, who is a Shatru? I will try to enunciate in just a few, one or two principles. A civilization which has a practice to accompany the truth statements that it is making. For example, there is something written in the Vedas. Vedas claim something. Our Upanishads claim something. They state something. Now, what is the accompanying practice to prove and test that truth? Is there an accompanying practice or not? So, in Bharat version, Sanatan Dharma, meditation, dhyana, yoga is the way in which you can test the knowledge that is given in the Vedas and the Upanishads. However, if you read the texts like the Bible and the Quran, there is absolutely no way you can test them. You have to believe in them. The Bible and the Quran, not Quran, yeah. The Bible and the Quran, if you read them, there is no way to test them. It's a belief system. You have to believe it without any means of testing it. So civilization which gives you a means of testing the truth statements that is given in your text, that is claimed by its wise men, it's a dharmic civilization. And those ideologies which claim that it cannot be proven and you have to believe it as it is, because that will necessarily create violence. If I am saying I am right and there is no way to prove it, in order for you to come over to my side. There is no other way. If you don't agree, I'll have to commit violence for you to come over to my side. So that creates all the trouble in the world. That is those ideologies which generate with this, which are dogmatic and which have no means of proving the truth. Those ideologies are Shatru, those ideologies are there. That is what I would like to say last. Thank you. You want to say something?
Namaskar to all of you. Whether we conquer, so whether we conquer or not conquer, whether we were passive or a very active, dynamic civilization, this is the question. Now it's up to us to accept whether our narrative is really strong or we are apologetic. Now the question comes, India never conquered. If this is the question, this has been injected into the minds of Indians by the colonial, post-colonial, it's a construct. But if you look at our civilizational story, it has always been that dynamic, forceful civilization or martial civilization, not a passive civilization. Otherwise, we would not have celebrated the hero warriors. We would not have this concept of Chakravarti, Digvijayi. We would not have a Ashwamedha Yajna. But it has been forcefully injected into our minds that we were always passive. Going ahead, we will be discussing more about the passivity of or the dynamic aspect of our civilization. So with these words, I will just, I shared my own idea of how it is a colonial and post-colonial construct and it has not been there in our civilizational ethics.
Wonderfully opened, and in fact I want to quote the incident from the Mahabharata where Yudhishthira gets this desire, of all the people Yudhishthira gets this prompt from Narada. So Narada has gone to, he roams around Swarga, Antariksha, Bhumi and even the nether worlds. So Yudhishthira asks him, you might have met our father, Pandu. So how is he? Narada says, yes, he is happy, he is in the Swarga. He was a great king, so he is in Swarga. But he told me something. And what did he tell you? So, your father Pandu met Harishchandra in Swarga. And in today's parlance, your father was given the silver room and Harishchandra has given the presidential suite in that 5-star hotel called Swarga. The kind of services that Harishchandra commands and the kind of riches and pleasures that he has. Your father says, he asks, why am I not entitled to these kind of pleasures? Right? I have been a conqueror, I have been a just king. I might not have had a very long rule, but whatever I have done for dharma. So what is the difference between Harishchandra and me? And then Indra told me Harishchandra performed the Rajasuya Yajna. So you died without performing the Rajasuya. So if your descendants, if your sons, grandsons, whoever, if they perform a successful Rajasuya Yajna, you will get these privileges. Which is why Yudhishthira wants to perform a Rajasuya Yajna. And it's beautiful because here you are not doing it for self, but you are doing it for your ancestors, right? And you are doing it for your progeny. So here that brings me to the definition of self, Swayam. Is it the individual, Vyashti? Is it the Samishti? Or is it timeless? So shall we dwell on the concept of how do we evaluate the self? Forget about the enemy. Before defining what is the enemy, we need to define our own self, what we stand for.
I think you should start this because you'll start at the individual level. I will go a little beyond that.
Actually, I want to start at individual level. I will keep it to society, so you can start.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I am a lifelong student of the Arthashastra, and I would like to definitely explain understanding yourself, not at the level of self, but go beyond to family, community, and finally the nation. So I will be speaking from the point of view
I think
of
the concept
state.
of self is never so
Yes.
narrow in
Yes.
the Indian this one.
So
When I
self
think for myself,
actually,
it is
yes.
for the
It becomes the entire universe. But of that universe, I will take the unit of the kingdom and the unit of the state, the nation, of which the leader is said to be the Vijigishu. What is the Vijigishu? That is the world conqueror. So there you have it, conquering again. But how do you understand this state? This state has that famous theory, the Saptanga state, the 7 Prakritis, which most people must be very familiar with. You have the king, that's the Swami, Amatya, Janpad, Kosh, Dand, Mitra, and these 7 Prakritis make up, these are the elements of the state. By analyzing each of these Prakritis, and in the Arthashastra, in book
Sumedha ji,
8,
maybe you want to tell the meaning of each
Okay.
word.
So,
Saptanga is very important.
Okay. So, Swami is the king. He is the first amongst equals. He is not identified with the state. That is a crucial difference between sovereignty in the Western sense and how we understand the power of the king. He is the first amongst equals, but he is not the state. The state has 7 elements. The second is Amatya or administration, which means all the ministers, the bureaucrats, today's bureaucrats and ministries and cabinets, etc. And we had them during the Mauryan period also, not just from the Arthashastra, but triangulated from the so-called Ashokan edicts, which I would like to call the Mauryan edicts. It's triangulated from there. So you have administration. The third is Janpad. Janpad is the land and the people. So it includes both history, geography, culture, society, people, everything. That's Janpad. Then you have the, after that you have the Dand, Kosh, Mitra and Durga. Yes, Durga has become a little less important for us today, so I think that's why it slipped out of my mind. We don't have forts like that today, but I would take it to mean, a symbol of security, symbol of internal and external security.
Defense fortification.
Defense fortifications, and now
Cyber
with
security.
technology, when you have fortifications in the sky, so it's you have to really change the concept of Durg. And of course you have Kosh, which is the treasury, Kosho, Mula, Danda. I come from the income tax department. That is our absolute motto, that it's money which makes the world go round. And then you have Dand, which is the army, and there you go again. If we were a state with ahimsa, ideas of not fighting, why would we have an important prakriti called Dand? There would have been no reason for it. And in fact, Niti Shastra is often called also as Danda Niti, as Sai Swaroopa and I were discussing in the morning when we were talking about this. And the last is Mitra. Mitra is international relations, your relations with everyone who is around you. Now these 7 prakritis, if you understand these, if you analyze these, you can get a kind of index of power. Today it is done after people like Hans Morgenthau, or you look at the CIA power index. But what are the elements of these indexes? These elements are the same from these 7 prakritis. So what Kautilya has done is given us tools to define, analyze all these 7 prakritis and come up with your own SWOT analysis. This is not some kind of blind thing that we are the greatest in the world. It is a SWOT analysis of yourself as well as your enemy. So you recognize yourself, then you recognize your enemy. That enemy is the Ari. There is also a very good definition of who and what the Ari is. Who is a good Ari, who is a bad Ari. And there is also a good definition of Yuddha, of fight. Why do you fight? Why do you not fight? What are the reasons? What kind of... and remember, Yuddha is the best Yuddha is dharm Yuddha. You can have Yuddha due to greed or some other reasons, but the best Yuddha is dharm Yuddha. The point here is that at the level of that unit which is called the state or the nation, which is an inescapable, essential part of the world order, either in the past or in the present. We have tools, we have manuals to recognize the strengths, weaknesses, and characteristics of our own kingdom, of those who are opposed to us. And those who are opposed to us are also opposed in two ways. The aim of the kingdom and the Vijigishu is Palan and Labh. So if any state is harming your Palan, that is the Yogakshem of the people, or Labh, that is the prosperity and future prosperity of your people, and if it is attacking the dharm of your nation, then it is youth all the way. But it has to be considered very, very carefully. Now this is a long topic. I don't want to go on and on myself, so I will pass it on to.
Thank you, Sumedha ji, for giving that clarity from the Shastras. In my book, I make it absolutely clear I'm not talking of Atmabodh, about the self, because simply it's beyond my capacity to talk about that. So I'm not talking about that. When I say Swayambodh, it's the sense of Hindu society, how Hindu society sees itself. Because in the journey of every civilization, there come many times when they have to think on it. Because an incident triggered this in my mind, that we have to define once again that who we are very clearly. There was a video by Manoj Muntashir, a few years ago, where he said, agar aap ye bhi nahi hai, to bhi Hindu, if you're not this, then you're Hindu, if you're not this, then you're Hindu. So then it was basically a non-definition, that you are a Hindu, kuch bhi nahi ho to aap Hindu ho. You are nothing to, then you are Hindu, you are everything, then you are Hindu. So I thought that this cannot be the definition. There has to be, if not a definition in the sense that certain other religions can define themselves, because we are a practice-based civilization, so it has to be more nuanced. But there has to be some ways to tell that you are apart, you are different from others. So what are those ways? I try to define some universals, because someone in Kashmir, if he says he is a Hindu, someone in Tamil Nadu, if he says he is a Hindu, there has to be something common between them. If there is nothing common between them, then at least one of them is not Hindu. So what is that sense of being Hindu is what you try to define. In 30 seconds, if you say, I learned it all from my guru, and the first part, Swayambodh, is all, even the Hindu society and its sense of itself is taken from him only. That the concepts of karma, prarabdha and punarjan, which are very central to us, all Hindu cosmology cannot exist without this. So the sense of karma, prarabdha, punarjan, the practice of meditation, yoga, dhyana, which are given in a text and which have been practiced all over, the concept of pancharana, that by the act of being born, there are certain rinas, debts, for the want of a better word, on us, and that decides the kartavya bodh of a Hindu, that how should the Hindu, duties of Hindu shall be defined based on the rinas that are on him. Those are Pancharinas, Devrina, Rishirina, Pitrarin, Narrin, Bhutrin. There are different enunciations, but this, in essence, the centrality of Vedas, not that we have to blindly believe in them, but this is the civilization. What is the marga? There are many desas, and we have always respected them. One of the greatest things of this land, Bharatvarsha, all over, if you go to any civilization, there is this constant conflict between classical and vernacular, between the centralizing force and the secessionist forces, and one oppresses the others. We are the only civilization where actually the marg has nourished desas, various desas, without destroying their individuality, their diversity. They have nourished them and connected them to the marg. So that marg is given in the Vedas and the central scriptures. So that respect of that, this constitutes basic template. And apart from that, there are so many differences which we have always, diversity which we have always appreciated. But my guru used to say, and at that time I thought that it's just a spin of words, that we are very fond of saying, unity in diversity. So he said it should be opposite. It should be diversity in unity. Why? Because unity is most fundamental to us. We come from the civilization which gave the concept of Advaita. Unity is fundamental, it's basic, it's original, diversity is emergent. And it is that unity, that sense of spiritual unity, highest unity, which informs all diversity, so that they do not fight against each other and nourish each other. That is, in essence, it was not 30 seconds, I'm sorry, 2 minutes of what the Hindu society is. Thank you.
In this world of binaries or dvandvas, there has been no time when one, it's free from shatrus. The existence of both negative and positive Shatru and Mitra will always be there. Now the question is, like, when you have binaries, so there has always been, and it's bound to be, like one set of binaries will be privileged, the other set will be suppressed. So sometimes the Shatru will rise, sometimes the Mitra will be subdued by the Shatru. Now here the Brahma Vidya comes to our rescue. How to handle this situation when we are a part of, an integral part of this Dvandvatmaka Jagat. One can never, whether, like in the matter of oneself, or one is dealing with the outer world. The Shatrus and Mitras, so both will always be existent. Now the Upanishad says, it's a very beautiful sentence which says, Swarat Samrat Bhavati. How a king is defined is that a Samrat, the one who wants to rule over the world, first he has to be Swarat. He has to conquer himself. Without conquering the self, one can never rule over others. Atma Jnanam, Atmanam Vidhi, Atma va are drashtavya, shrotavya, mantavya, nididhyasitavya. This is fundamental to our Sanatana Dharma, our civilization. I will explain that one has to see oneself. Hear the voice of the truth from within. Shrotavya, mantavya, think about it, contemplate on it, be meditated upon it. Nididhyasitavya. So unless and until one conquers oneself, because the enemies are both within and without. The inner enemies have to be conquered. Without conquering the inner enemies, the outer enemies can never be conquered. So this is the Brahma Vidya. That is why it gave focus, it gave always stress on the Swayambodh. Swayambodh has a, like the meanings at different levels, you can say, but essentially, so what the Shastras have done, who is Shatru, to define that, it says, say for example, like you go to Bhagavad Gita, the Daivasura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga. So it clearly defines what we are essentially. He says, Krishna says to Arjuna, that you are born to Daivi Sampad. This is your essential character. Then it says what goes against it is the Asuri Bhava, the Shatru Bhava. So unless and until we know ourselves, our essential nature, it is even difficult to understand the Shatru, control the Shatru, or conquer the Shatru. So this is where comes the importance of knowing oneself, becoming the Swarat before one becomes the Samrat.
Wonderfully elucidated. So that actually defines how the king should be, right? And as long as the king is not selfish, the ruler is not selfish, the leader is not selfish, we can trust him, to take the country, the society with him, right? And that just reminds me of this shloka, when we are defining ourselves. The diversity element is beautifully explained in Vishnu Purana when the Purana describes India as the land to the south of Himalayas and to the north of the sea. And there are so many rivers, so many kingdoms. So the diversity is described there. But why are all the citizens of so many kingdoms called as Bharatiya? What is the commonality? So this shloka says tapas tapyanti munayoha. Along this so many civilizations and so many kingdoms, this land, the munis do tapasya. Juhyate chapi yajinaha. The yajnas are performed by people who can afford them, people who can visualize them. The yajna is something which is done as a, not for a selfish purpose. Basically, it is the, you do a tyaga of your punya karma for a greater purpose. That is a yajna. The Litfest also is a yajna, because it brings together so many thoughts. And even those who cannot do yajna, danani chatra diyante, people give dana, paralokartham adarat, right? For the paraloka, for the loka which is beyond what we can see, these three things people do across the land, right? And now that gives us some kind of a Swayambodha, and and so in this dynamic, how do we define a Shatru, especially in the recent connotation where who we thought will be our ally overnight turned hostile?
So, I will again go back to Cautillian thought, because that is where I normally focus. In Cautillian thought, defining the Ari has been done not only in the book on Prakritis, which I just explained to you, but there is a section on Mitra. There is a section on how to relate with all the people, all the nations around you, and you must have heard of the famous Mandal theory. So the Mandal theory says, Kautilya says that the whole world is divided into different mandals. So there is you, that is the Vijayishu, remember, the world conqueror. And then there is the Ari, that is your enemy. And then you have the Madhyam and the Udasin, who are also two very strong, powerful conglomerates. Now all these categories are not single nations, they are conglomerates. The Ari is a group of people who are not your allies. Now, in the context of what Sai Swaroopa just said, of today's very quickly shifting sands, the Mandal theory provides us a very good mapping of understanding the international relations and who are the kingdoms, who are the nations today, nation states which become our enemies and our friends. So the Mandal theory can map this out. The advantage is that it gives you groups, it also gives you individuals. So if you are looking at China, then China's relationship with the USA, China's relationship with Russia will also be included in this Mandal system. So from the point of view of nation states, to recognize that those nations which are harming the welfare of your country, remember the Palan and the Lav that I spoke of, if anybody is harming the Palan of the constituents of all the 7 Prakritis, especially the Janpad, they are your enemy. And if they are not letting you prosper, they are your enemy. And there are so many ways in which you can actually deal with them. I think maybe you will have a question on that later, right?
I think
but I will just quickly say that he has many methods of dealing with them. Outright war is one of them, but there are many other methods which are before that, which are encapsulated in the 4 upayas and the Shadgunyam. Maybe we'll get a chance to discuss that.
you can
Shall I explain?
Yeah.
Or shall I
quickly explain.
Okay. So the 4 upayas are some of the oldest ways of negotiating and understanding the conflict between people and finishing or making some kind of harmonious conclusion to that. Psalm, that is in effect, trying to conciliate people. There are 5 types of psalm and 5 subtypes of each 5 of these, so it's huge. The main focus of the Arthashastra is on psalm. Although we have this in many of the other Purans, and they have been explained in certain different ways, and our dharm gurus have also said that these are ways in which individuals can get over their conflicts with their own enemies. So, perhaps when we have the Shatrubodh and we have a Shatru, we can try some. The other is Dan, which is bribery, let me put it that way. And then you have Bhed, and then you have Dand. Bhed is using of confusing tactics, confusing people, maybe using a little bit of deceit, and throwing them off balance so that you can push your own view. And Dand, of course, is using force. That is what the subject of this is all about. Shadgunyam is something developed by Kautilya, especially separately, because the 4 upayas come from a very old holy tradition. Shadgunyam is especially developed in the Arthashastra for relations with other countries, and over there you have something called Sandhi, which is friendly relations, Vigraha, which is hostility, Asan, which is quiet, neither here nor there, it is a kind of loaded indifference. Then you have Yan, which is actually war, and then you have something which is called Dvairi Bhav. Dvairi Bhav is the most interesting one, where you can use two of these together to confuse your opponent. So all these are ways in which today I think Hindu society can actually use these methods to deal with people who are inimical to our civilization and our way of thinking.
Thank you. I will go on what the other kinds of enemies are, because in my book I have focused on the ideological enemies that you do not face them only outside your borders or at the borders, which you also face within the borders. So there is a famous incident which Sitaram Goyalji, one of the greatest historians and thinkers of last century from the Hindu side, he based his book, he wrote a book in Hindi, Saptashil, in which he starts from an incident from the life of Buddha. Now when we think of Buddha, we all only think of, we have been made to think only of ahimsa and all. But here what happens is that a general in which Buddha is sitting and meditating, in the land in which he is sitting and meditating, the general of that land comes to him and says, look, oh great one, I have been trying to conquer the neighboring kingdom for last 10 years or so, but I have been unable. So can you tell me how to do that? So Buddha asked 7 questions to him. So does that society follow this Shila, that's it? Do they respect women? Do they respect temples? Do they respect rishis? And when he answers in affirmative to all of them, he says that you cannot conquer that society until they maintain these Shilas. So what you have to do is to send your spies in that kingdom, send ideas, corrupt them at the level of ideas, so that when they are corrupted from within, then it is easy to conquer them. So that is what has happened with us, because Sitaramji once again wrote a wonderful book around 42 years ago, Hindu Society Under Siege, in which he starts saying that Hindus are not aware that they are under siege. The thing is that I have seen this movement move forward 23 years ago when my guru put me on this path. Till here there is a great progress. You know, right now we have Litfest where we can talk about these things. At that time, if you were to shout at the top of your voice in your city, people will call you pagal and nobody will pay attention. So we have come a long way.
When police will come to arrest
Yeah. They did.
Sitaramji was arrested also.
Yes. So that was the stage, and now we have come where we can talk about these things. But the thing is still enough number of Hindus do not realize that they are under siege, because the enemy at the level of ideas is a very different enemy. What we are used to traditionally, that's why I say that the Swayambodh is not enough. Because when you encounter an enemy which you never have before, so lest it becomes controversial, but it could be, for example, in COVID, what happened, when a new virus comes, there is no defense in your society, everyone falls sick. And most of the people fall sick. But over the time, you study them, you study those strains, and then you develop defense and also vaccines. Vaccines and internal defense mechanisms. So both for natural and cultural vaccines to evolve, it needs some time, it needs some study. That is why specifically studying Shatru is very important. These ideas which actually invaded our civilization corrupted many minds, where what we know as religion, it was weaponized. Politics weaponized religion, turned it against us. So we need to know what those ideas are. Ideas which believe in, because I start my book with one idea and I will end it there also, that I was going in Vidisha to a temple and my driver was there. Now there was a huge rally in Vidisha, and mind you, MP is not known for its minorities. And there was a huge rally of Muslims. They were protesting for something which had happened in Palestine. So my driver asked a very pertinent questions. How were they able to unite across national, international boundaries? And why are we divided on the issues of land, language, and all of that? So what is that idea? We need to study that. And in my book I will not elaborate it here. That what are those ideas which makes them united across all borders of land, language, ideas, which we need to study. Only then we will be able to make a difference. Thank you.
So Pankaj's book, I guess, is available outside. Yes, we will. Okay. So the static and dynamic nature of the enemy, right? We have discussed the external, we have discussed the internal, but enemy may turn friend, friend may turn enemy, and something about that, Sampadananda.
So the best way of explaining the static and dynamic aspect. We know the Sankhya Darshana, the Purusha and the Prakriti, the static and the dynamic. So there has been nothing like always static or always dynamic. So there has to be the static element as the force behind to support. And the Prakriti has to continue with the action, the dynamic action. There's a beautiful verse in the Gita which says, Karmani akarma yah pashe, akarmani cha karma yah. Seeing action in inaction and inaction in action. This action you translate as Prakriti and inaction into Purusha, then you can understand the verse in a better manner. And who is our enemy and who is our friend? Gita has a clear answer. Atmeva bandhuratmana, atmeva ripuratmana. You yourself are your enemy, you yourself are your friend. What is the solution? Uddharet atmanatmana. And it says, deliver yourself by yourself. And how this dynamic aspect of Prakriti in the context today we are talking or today we are facing, or the civilization has been facing. So I put it into the fourfold force, the Atma Bala, Buddhi Bala, Sarira or Sainya Bala and Artha Bala. These four forces together, they keep our civilization dynamic, and we always have actualized and then put into force every aspect of it, not one of these, Atma Bala, Buddhi Bala, Sainya Bala or Sharira Bala and the Artha Bala. So when these four we concentrate together, these four forces are active and dynamic always, then the civilization moves forward, rooted within its own values. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful discussion. I think each topic warrants a lecture, but we are unfortunately running out of time. And
Any question? Any question?
No, during the
Not
break,
be
Yeah.
questions.
we do the book launches now. You can interact during the coffee break.
We will now have book launches of both Shri Pankaj Saxena ji's book as well as Dr Sampadananda Mishra ji's books. Yes, we request Puja Swami Vidyananda ji to please come on stage and release Shri Pankaj Saxena ji's books.
Yes, इधर आ जाओ बाहर Swayambodh and Shatrubodh. Good that you have used the word Hindu, otherwise many people run away from this word. And then many will find issues in Indic, Pindic and Sanatan also.
We now request Puja Swami Vidyananda ji to please release the Rishi tradition of Bharat by Dr Sampadananda Mishra ji.
How are you doing?
Yes.